have discussed on 15th, we discussed documentation, we discussed the concept of global logistics, and we gave an introduction to global logistics. And a very quick recap, as always, what we discussed on 17th, that is on our last session, we discussed about one of the most important function of logistics, and that is transportation. We discussed about transportation as a whole, its costs, its components, the factors which determine what kind of transport needs to be engaged by a particular organization, what are the factors which are responsible for selecting a particular mode of transportation. And in the context of global logistics, we discussed multimodal transportation, that is particularly when shipment move from one country to the other, it is subject to different modes of transportation. So either it could be, it would move partially through surface transportation, maybe truck, maybe a trailer, then gets into a train, and then it gets into a vessel or an aircraft, then it arrives at the destination, and there again it is subject to multimodal transportation. We discussed the various multimodal transport operators. We discussed the significance of intermodal transportation. We also discussed a little bit about, you know, the different kind of the freight forwarders. What are the role of freight forwarders? Excuse me. So these are the different topics we discussed in our last edition on 17th of April. Today we are again going to discuss another important topic, and it's primarily about warehousing. We will discuss about warehousing. We will discuss about the relevance of warehousing. As I said earlier, fundamentals and basics are extremely important. We will definitely discuss the importance of warehousing in global trade in terms of import and export, warehouses established near the ports, at the seaports, at the airports. We'll discuss about customs clearance. We'll discuss about what kind of role warehouse plays in terms of export and import of different commodities in different countries. In my previous class, I did mention the importance of transportation and warehousing in logistics. Now, logistics involves different functions, different roles, like order processing. It could be packaging, packing. It could be loading, unloading, procurement, purchasing, sourcing, material handling, etc. But the two most significant functions or components of global logistics, all logistics as a whole, one is transportation. I did mention, if we compare the economy as a human body, then we will relate transportation to its veins and arteries, which moves blood from one cell to the other. And the cells over here are the warehouses, are the places where we need to stock. A good and efficient or inefficient warehousing. Now, what happens in a warehousing? Very simple. There's no rocket science as such. We stock materials. What kind of materials? It could be raw materials, it could be components, it could be work in process goods, it could be packing materials, it could be PPEs, it could be manufactured goods, it could be finished products, it could be goods in pipeline. So various categories of goods, commodities, products are stored. And what we need to do, we need to manage that. We need to manage that inventory. So inventory management plays a very important part. And let me tell you, it can either make or break a business. A proper or improper management of inventory can actually make or break a particular economy or an industry or a company. So today in this edition, participants, I will share 3 PPTs, 3 PowerPoint presentations. One is I will discuss about the basics, the fundamentals, the concept of what warehousing is all about. Then we switch over, move over to warehousing in the context of global logistics, warehousing in the context of import and export, warehousing in terms of bonded warehouses, public warehouses, which are primarily functions as facility at the docks for import and export of goods. And the third PowerPoint presentation that we are going to discuss today is again a little technical, but as I said, it is about customs clearance. When you have shipment, I have still not come to presentation. I've still not come to presentation. Somebody is asking, he cannot see the presentation. I'll just get into the presentation in a few seconds. Before going to the presentation, it is important that I give you an overall or a macro picture of what we are going to discuss today. So understanding the presentations become even more easier when I give you a macro picture of what we are going to discuss in the next 2 hours. So coming back to customs clearance, okay, any shipment. Now, what is export or what is import? What is a port? A port is a place at the border of a country which connects two countries basically. So when it goes beyond a port, when it has to move through a port, when a trade happens between two countries, when it's a bilateral trade between two countries, bilateral, when two countries engage into business, into trade, they exchange commodities, one country buy a good, the other country is selling a good, and they have to follow certain norms and documentations and regulations. And all this happens in a port very easily. And there is an authority, there are a group of people work at the customs, and your goods are subject to certain documentation. I did mention in the very first edition that documentation are the soul, or is the soul of documentations are the soul of the global logistics process. Proper documentation can make the entire global logistics process very, very prompt and smooth. So without wasting any time, let me go to my first PowerPoint presentation. And before that, let me also tell you that the first PowerPoint presentation tells everything about warehousing. So as always, I will flip through a few of the slides which may not be that important for you. And I will stop and discuss few of the slides because as I had mentioned in the very first, on the very first day, it is not easy to master a subject like global logistics in 6 hours. I'll be happy if we all leave this session with a decent macro view of what global logistics and its significance to international trade is all about. So let me go back to the to my PowerPoint presentation. So even before I go and discuss this particular presentation, this particular presentation is named at warehouse management, how you manage a warehouse. Is warehouse a place just to store goods, where we keep our goods? Primarily, yes. What kind of goods? As I mentioned earlier, it could be raw materials, it could be finished products, it could be work in process goods, it could be components, it could be PPEs, it could be MRO goods, etc. I do not want to get extended, but warehouses today are not simply facilities where we store goods. Warehouses has evolved. I'll just give you a macro view before, because this particular presentation goes into almost 100 and more than 100 slides. So it is important for me to give you an overall picture about what this particular presentation is all about. So warehousing is nothing new. If you remember the other day when we were discussing transportation and logistics and routing and different components, we said it is nothing new. It happened in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries as well, way back at that point of time when the explorers came to the Asian countries for trading different kinds of commodities. So in earlier days, before the Industrial Revolution, the entire economy was agriculture based. So what happened at that point of time? Even then people stored goods. Where did they store goods? They stored goods in the cellar. At a later point of time, where are the cellars? They are basically underground. Those are underground facilities, and they were named as godowns. Godowns literally comes from the word go down, that you have to go down and go below and go to the cellar to fetch your provisions, your cereals, your food grains, your oil, your etc. etc. So from that time onwards, warehousing has evolved. And today, e-commerce companies have completely change the configuration and the concept of warehousing. There is technology, there is advanced technology applied. Today, warehouses have transformed into distribution centers. Today, we have fulfillment centers. So warehouses practically, of course, fundamentally are places meant for storing goods, but it does not stop there. And we are going to see slide after slide how warehouse management, how warehouse has over a period of time transformed into distribution centers, fulfillment centers. What are the precautions that need to be taken for building a warehouse? What are the factors that determine where a warehouse to be established? You have a warehouse of Amazon very close to the outer ring road, which goes into lakhs of square kilometers. Why did Amazon select this particular place to build up their warehouse? You have a Flipkart warehouse which runs into lakhs of square feet near Company. Why did Flipkart select that? So there are factors which determine the establishment of a particular. You have warehouse of a giant multinational Procter and Gamble having warehouse of almost 3 lakh square feet very close to Mehboob Nagar. Why did they select Mehboob Nagar? So there are factors, there are reasons behind establishing a particular warehouse at a particular place. We will understand that, those factors. We will also understand the kind of role, the different kind of roles played by a warehouse. It is not only about storage of goods, it goes much beyond that. So let us see. Is it only a storage facility? Primarily, yes. For logistical system design, the role of the warehouse is properly viewed as a switching facility, contrasting to a storage. In a storage, of course, you only store. In a switching facility, warehouse is meant for when you have to shift and transfer goods from one facility to the other, maybe to an assembly section, to a production unit, etc. As I said, our goods are stored for future use when they are not immediately needed. You have to understand today the economy is extremely volatile. So extremely, the demand is not certain. It's extremely uncertain. There's a lot of competition. So warehouses or distribution center, warehouse will stick to our discussion, or the term into warehouse will come to distribution center later. It plays a huge part in keeping a balance between demand and supply broadly. Sometimes demand is high when you need a faster movement of goods. So warehouses would have safety stocks, which would be used when the demand is very high. And when the demand is very low, fundamentally, then when the flow and the demand is low, then you need to stock those for a future period when again the demand comes back. Today, we see the economy is going through a phase where we require warehouses to stock goods because we anticipate that there would be soon a period when the demand will again surge, and all these stocks will be used, will be required for the purpose of consumption by the customers. Warehousing, if you see, very important, if you see very interestingly, this part, transportation at 0 miles per hour. That means it is also part of the transportation system. Only thing that this transportation does not move. It is moving at 0 miles per hour. That means it is static. So it is only considered to be a part of the entire transportation process. When we have transportation process between the seller and the buyer. I would like to take you back a little bit on the 15th when we were discussing supply chain management. It tells us about the journey of a particular product when it started from the stage of raw materials, converted into components, component converts it into a manufactured or assembly or a finished good, and then gradually distributed through distribution channel, distributors, retailer, wholesaler, etc., etc., etc. And this movement happens through transportation system, as simple as that. Either within a state, within a city, within a region, within a country, but in our context, in the current subject, across the borders. That means globally. So transportation, and in between you need the goods to be static, to be stored, and there is where warehousing plays a part. So as I said, what are the various functions of warehouses. It's storage, handling, and information. There are various other functions, but as I said, that we are not going to get extended because we just have only 2 hours. And I will only address those areas which are extremely important. So we handle the materials, we store the materials, and we gather along. Today is the world of information. You know how data science, data analytics, logistics analytics, supply chain analytics, there are big data information which are used for BI, which is called business intelligence. There are lakhs and crores and billions and millions of data generated at the warehouses, distribution center, the fulfillment centers, and the TMS, transport management system, or warehouse management system. These are softwares which collect, extracts data, and these data are used by the promoters or the owners of the company or the strategists of the company to take business decisions, to take decisions for the future. So godowns, stores, warehouse, distribution center, and fulfillment centers. Very broadly, I said godowns was a concept even we heard. Our generation who started our careers in the mid-80s, we are quite familiar. Even today you have godowns, of course you have godowns, which are basically a very unorganized way of warehousing things, a little unorganized. Things which are kept randomly. Stores are also warehouses, but which operates at a smaller scale. You have medical stores, you have stationery stores, which are easy to retrieve. There are no bulk materials as such, smaller items, whereas warehouses are facilities which can accommodate bulk items. It can accommodate containers, it will accommodate pallets, it will accommodate several cartons. They will have a battery run operator transport system within the warehouses. So it operates on a large scale. What does distribution center do? Here comes the role of e-commerce, and we will see later on how e-commerce has led into the concept of distribution center and fulfillment center. Distribution center does many things which warehouses functionally, conceptually, they don't perform. They basically do an order fulfillment. They do labeling, they do packing, they do routing, they do sorting. All these functions are done by distribution centers. E-commerce centers and retail, they have gone one step ahead and they have identified this concept of fulfillment center. The very word fulfillment of the end customer. Distribution center basically distributes high and medium volume of quantities sent to either the retailers or the wholesalers, primarily the retailers, and retailers take care of delivering to the end customers. But sometimes end customers are so important that they need a fulfillment. It cannot be routed through a retail center. So fulfillment center would take the responsibility of delivering to a customer directly. Or the customer may visit the fulfillment center. You just see what happens at IKEA. You have a huge facility of IKEA at near high-tech city. We all know we belong to this particular city. So the company has decided to name it not a warehouse, not a distribution center, but a fulfillment center. That means it would fulfill all the requirements of the customers. They would assemble, they would design they would either deliver or they would deliver at the store itself, at the center itself, or deliver to your homes. So they will consolidate, they will make a package of the different items that you select from there. Okay, they would do a kind of an assortment for you. Not only one product, but various products together, they would do an assortment for you. So based on, if you remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you remember participants, I did mention today's supply chain is not a supply-driven supply chain, it's a demand-driven supply chain. The e-commerce companies have realized this, and this has resulted into distribution center and fulfillment center. So I will not take much time in discussing what godowns and warehouses and fulfillment centers are. So I have just told you it's basically an unorganized form of warehouse. But warehouses have some kind of parameters. They have a standard of security and storage. They will sort the product. There is space for movement of cargo and employees, but the godown may not have it. Is haphazard, right? So this is, I've just tried to give you a kind of a macro view or of the differences between a godown, between a store and a godown, between a godown and a warehouse, difference between warehouse and distribution center, and so on and so forth. So this particular slide tells you about, as I said, few of the slides would have extended text. Don't bother about it. When you probably when you get this, as I repeat, you get the PowerPoint presentation, take time to go through the slides carefully and in detail. So this again, this tells you basically the difference between a godown and a store. In a warehouse, you can use the trucks, systematic storage of goods. All that happens, which is not the case in terms of a godown. As I stored, very basic difference between, we have discussed about godown. Now, what is the store? It is meant for items where we need items for very urgent need, for immediate needs. Okay, as I said, medical stores. Okay, and you have a store. You know, I work for an university or any college or everywhere, or even big institution organizations. They have stationery stores. Okay, and you go there and you pick up any item which is required immediately. Okay, so that's basically what a store is all about. Again, in this slide, I have given a basic difference between. So next, almost 7 to 8 slides actually tells you the difference between these 4 concepts of godown, storage, warehouses, distribution. Sorry, not 4, but 5 of them. Godown, store, warehouses, distribution center, and fulfillment center. So as I said, store is small in size, whereas warehouses are bigger, mostly electronic components used, etc. So this is basically the difference between store and a warehouse. Now comes distribution center. Why distribution center? As I said, always this is courtesy the e-commerce industry, the development and evolution of e-commerce. Order processing, fulfillment, distribution, you have to be close to the customer. Today, customers are demanding. They do not want to wait for their they do not want to wait for their product. They want to stay very close to the customer and use the last mile delivery. They use the last mile delivery system to get the documents, to get the shipment delivered to the end users. It is like a warehouse, but it also does the order processing, and it is demand driven. If you see over here, the two most important part over here, order processing and demand driven, and they want to be close to the customer, the distribution centers. Whereas warehouses, they need not be. In fact, warehouses are far away, quite far away from the customers and end consumers, because warehouses basically have products as and when received from the manufacturing unit and then move to the distribution centers. These are basically the role of the distribution center: order fulfillment, value-added services, kitting, work order, custom packing, engraving, embroidery, etc. Now, as I said, supply chain as a concept, it started in US sometime around 1990. Supply chain as a concept, that means working, integrating with our vendors and the supplier. Various companies, large companies, manufacturing companies, as I said at the very first session on 15th, in a global supply chain, the supply chain becomes very complicated because we are working with various vendors, suppliers, and channel partners who are scattered all over the globe, all over the world. So when I said distribution center, don't try to relate with what is happening in India only. We are still far behind in terms of developing distribution center, though it's changing, it is evolving. But where US or Singapore is today, or London is today, or Australia is today, We are still to catch up in terms of technology, in terms of all the functions which are available in a distribution center. If you go to Google, unfortunately, I am not in a position to show you a video, but if you go to Google, and if you try to see a video of a fulfillment center or a distribution center of Amazon in New York or the US, you will see the kind at what scale they operate, or what are the kind of functions they do. It is completely automated. They use robots, what not these distribution centers do. So it's a large scale operation. It is not restricted to only storage of goods as happen in a warehouse. And this obviously gives you the difference between a warehouse and a distribution center. This is an error. The terms are often used interchangeably, but this is a mistake. When I say interchangeably, that means we often think they are the same, and it's not. It's not the same. Distribution center is a dynamic place. A lot of activities happen. Whereas storage, shipment comes and they are stored at the respective places. That's it. A warehouse is almost static. But as I said, distribution centers are dynamic, very dynamic. So next few slides actually tells you about distribution center, and we arrive at what is called a fulfillment center. Okay. As I said, fulfillment center adds value, again, adds a lot of value to a customer. And very deliberately, purposely, I gave you some example of what fulfillment center is all about when I refer to IKEA. IKEA is a unique combination of a distribution and a fulfillment center, where it stores goods, where it does order processing, but it goes to the extent of fulfilling each and every customer's need. In a distribution center, orders are processed based on bulk orders, and they are dispatched to the retailers in bulk. But in a fulfillment center, you can procure, you can get any order of any kind, of any volume, of any weight, and it can be assorted the way you want it, can be modified the way you want it. Furniture, for example, it can be assembled the way you want it. A bed, a sofa, an almirah, a dresser, whatever you may call it. Based on your requirements, based on the design, it can be assembled. It can be assorted with other products. It can be either delivered at the store or delivered at your doorstep by their own logistics system. That is what fulfillment is all about. Fulfillment centers are also used by other e-commerce and retail companies in US and other developed countries, because small retailers and small e-commerce companies cannot run their own fulfillment center. It is expensive. It is expensive. So some fulfillment center also, they are standalone or they are third-party fulfillment centers, okay, and they operate on behalf of several other e-commerce companies or retailers. So that is what fulfillment centers. So these are basically what the fulfillment centers do. Sometimes, yes, they seem to be a little same as the distribution center, but not. Shipping order, company selling product directly to customer. What is most important over here is, which does not happen either in a warehouse or a distribution center, is company selling direct to the consumers, and that is fulfillment. The very word fulfillment is fulfilling the entire demand of the end consumer or a customer. That's what the crux or the nucleus or the fundamental of a fulfillment center. So I will not discuss anything further about a fulfillment center. If you see the first one, I have discussed already, enable e-commerce merchants to outsource warehousing and shipping. So a standalone fulfillment center, they would extend their services to e-commerce company for shipping, order processing, packing, distribution, etc. So bigger companies, they have their own fulfillment centers, but smaller companies can also outsource other fulfillment centers. Let us not spend any time on this because this particular slide was made for. So they will count, inspect at the SKU stock keeping units. They will do the storage. So basically, this gives the basically the difference between what a distribution center and fulfillment center is all about, which we have. This is the impact of e-commerce, which has disrupted the logistics system, particularly the last mile delivery. It has disrupted the logistics system in terms of distribution. It has disrupted because the kind of technology being used because of the evolution of e-commerce. And today, transportation, warehousing, storage, inventory management has taken a different meaning and shape altogether simply because the e-commerce has made the customer more demanding. They have brought the retailers at the doorstep of every customer. See what Big Basket is doing. So again, the few steps, they have put a lot of pressure on the logistics and transportation. There's a lot of pressure today on, if you remember in one of the sessions, either on 15th or 17th, I did mention that is the e-commerce company who survive on two pillars. Their existence, their performance stand on two pillars. One pillar is technology and the other pillar is logistics. What is technology doing? Technology has brought the entire marketplace into your Android phone. You can log in, select, sort, identify the item that you require in terms of food, in terms of apparels, in terms of medicine, handphone, washing machine, whatever. It gives the convenience of sorting, selecting, purchasing, doing the purchase transaction. And then you can monitor. All is done by technology. And what logistics does? Logistics fulfill all that is committed and assured by these e-commerce companies. That means delivery the next day, delivery in the right condition, delivery at the right place by the right people in the right condition, right quantity, etc. That's the logistics part. And that's the reason why e-commerce companies who operate in large scale, they do not outsource their logistics. If you remember the other day, we were discussing about 3PL organizations, 3PL companies. So manufacturers, they use third party or they outsource their logistics function, that is transportation and distribution of the product, to some other company, but not e-commerce company. Because their performance depends upon how quickly shipments are delivered. So they cannot take a chance. So again, I will not spend any more time on impact of e-commerce. I have given you the crux and the. So this is what they have done. They have allows individual to order a huge variety. They have GPS, they will monitor, they will do all that. Okay. Let me quickly go to. So let us go to the roles and functions of warehouse. I have given you a macro view. Let us also go through a few slides, which will tell you the general roles and functions of warehouse, because our topic is warehousing. And in the next PPT, we will quickly go to warehousing in context of import and export. In terms of commodities, which are either sent out of the country or brought into the country, either commodities being sold to other countries or commodities being bought from other countries. So these are the basic roles of this transportation, mixing, docking, servicing the customer, and protection. Very important is protection as well. Why we use a warehouse? We do not want to keep it in our custody. First of all, lack of space. Number two, it remains safe and secured with a warehouse company who provides all the securities. So this is basically what happens. Warehousing is all about, it's a small logistics center. You have inbound logistics, you have outbound logistics, as simple as that. Inbound logistics brings in material from your suppliers. It could be raw materials, it can be components, it could be any commodity. It is stored in a warehouse, and then you have outbound logistics when it moves out and being delivered and distributed to your customers. As simple as that. That's the basic model of a warehouse. And in between, you have a dock, you have the warehousing center, you have racks, you have pallets where documents are stored. So these are the basic principles of a warehouse. You have the receiving, as I said, simply inbound, input, schedule, unload, and then you have put away or storage. And then you ship. So inbound, store, outbound, dispatch. It is not as simple as I say over here. Of course, for that you need to have, I'm sure our participants, there are participants who have experience of working in various corporates. We have managers, we have senior people from the corporate, and they do have a fair idea as to what a warehouse is all about, what are the functions of a warehouse. We are just trying to give you an overall picture, a macro view of warehousing. As I said, it's a mini logistics center in terms of inbound, storage, and outbound. Simple. So there are costs. Of course, we have capital costs, sunk costs in order to establish a particular warehouse. Okay, in terms of the building, in terms of the land, in terms of the machineries that you put, and on a day-to-day basis, you spend money on labor, operations, transportation, loading, unloading. So you receive, identify the good, dispatch, you hold the goods, you pick the goods, etc., and marshal the goods, monitor the goods. So in the next few slides, we are only giving you a brief description of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 functions of identification, dispatch, holding, picking, marshalling, etc. Cube utilization, very important. Again, it becomes a little technical. It's called the building block. Okay, the building block concept, that you want to make a number of shipments made into one single shipment. The way several bricks build a wall, several walls build a room, several rooms make an apartment, and several apartments make a building, several building makes a community. So similarly, several smaller, suppose you are storing mineral water bottles. So 100 mineral water bottles cannot be stored individually, so they are put into a carton. Several cartons are put into a pallet, several pallets are put into a container, etc., etc. So this is called the building block concept, or it's called the cube utilization as an unit. As I said, there are basically fundamentally 4 types of warehouses. 4. A private, a public, a contract, and a multi-client warehouse. Now, a private warehouse is something that a company owns himself. A public warehouse, private warehouse. Public warehouses, as you can see, which we will discuss at length in our next PowerPoint presentation, are bonded warehouse also, which are used by multiple customers. It is not restricted to a single customer. The ownership does not belong to any particular company or enterprise or a corporate. Whereas private warehouses, now there are various reasons why people, manufacturers who operate in very large scale, they would have a private warehouse because they have the money, number one, to establish, to spend, to invest on private warehouse. They can use it the way they want to, they can monitor, they can modify the way they want to, and they feel that the control of movement of the goods are far better when you have a private warehouse rather than a public warehouse. A contract warehouse is also a kind of a private warehouse as well, but for a particular period of time. It is like when you hire a cab from one place to the other, only during that period the cab belongs to you to an extent. So the warehouse also belongs to you. You are not the owner of the warehouse as such, but you are hiring that warehouse for a period of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, depending upon your need. And a multi-client warehouse is an aggregator. Of course, you have warehouses which are also kind of a contract warehouse. It is not a private warehouse, it's a contract warehouse where a warehouse being utilized by several companies, not necessarily companies who operate in a large scale, smaller companies. So all of them have their designated space within the warehouse. So these are multi-client warehouses. So I did not discuss any further what a private warehouse is. The very first line tells you owned by big companies or single manufacturing units. Okay, so the reason for using a private warehouse, I have already told you. The basis of range of this is public warehouse. It could be used for general merchandise, refrigerated, for special commodities, household goods and furniture. And number 4, which is more important, which has relevance to what we are discussing today, and we'll discuss at length in the next PowerPoint, is bonded warehouse, which are customs controlled warehouse at the ports. Today, our country is developing in certain sectors. For example, cold chain industry is growing very fast. When we say cold chain, items which are frozen, chilled, etc., semi-processed foods, perishable goods. But the industry is not that big that a company can use their own private warehouse, temperature controlled warehouse. So there are a lot of public warehouses. A lot of public warehouses which are used by several companies. Okay, these are temperature controlled warehouses, which can also be considered as or named as public warehouses. So again, basically, we have given an explanation of what are the kinds of items. I have just mentioned about the refrigerated warehouse. It handles, maintains food, medical items, chemical products. Of course, top companies like Cipla or Dr. Reddy's, etc., they would, for their safety, for their confidentiality, for security purpose, would have their own refrigerator or temperature controlled warehouses. As I said, bonded warehouses are used for export and import. And a contract warehouse, what is most important in a contract warehouse is mentioned over here, which should be mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial to the person who owns the warehouse, and also the person who is contracting or hiring the warehouse for a certain period of time. There are tailored services, there are exclusive, there are shared risks. Very important, the risks are often shared. What kind of risk? There could be a risk of damage, theft, pilferage, flood, earthquake, etc. Of course, the owners of the warehouse or the owners of the goods, they would have their commodities insured, but they cannot insure the property. So the property has to be insured by the owner of the warehouse. So if I'm the owner of a warehouse in Mehboob Nagar, I will have to insure the facility from natural calamities like floods or earthquake or whatever it is, damage, etc. At the same time, when I lend it to a particular person or an organization, they have to also insure. So it's a kind of a shared responsibility to prevent any kind of damages arising out of whatever risks I've just mentioned. So again, a few of the slides. So this tells you a very interesting matrix. It tells you about the cost. There are 4 cost components. One is capital, operating, rates, and risks. For example, if you go right at the bottom, risks, I have already said, risks are assumed and stated on the lease and the base of the contract. At the very beginning, as far the contract is concerned, in case there is a damage arising out of whatever risks or it could be external risk or an internal risk, the contract would specify. Now, if you see in terms of public warehouse, I do not have, if I'm availing the service of a public warehouse, I do not incur any capital cost because the establishment already exists. But in terms of private warehouse, I have to bear the cost of the building, for the facility, for handling, for loading, etc., which are basically the capital cost. So basically here I have given a comparison of cost of the different warehouses. So this gives you the difference summary as such, and let us not discuss in detail. Before I go into this, there are two kinds of benefits that a warehouse gives. Two broad kinds of benefits. A, and once I have given you an overall picture of the benefits, I will not wait at a particular site. I will not halt at a particular slide for a long period of time. So there are two benefits. One is economic, which arise out of financial benefits, and the other one is service benefits. Let me give a very simple example. When you have, there are certain kind of, and I will show you in the future slides, but just to give you a kind of a, what is the kind of economic benefits. Now, when you have to deliver, the other day, if you remember, participants, I discussed about deconsolidation. What is deconsolidation? Now, I'm a manufacturer in Chandigarh or Guwahati, for example, and I have several distributors and retailers in the state of Telangana. Now, it will be very expensive for me to use different transportation for the different retailer and customers in Telangana. So I consolidate the entire shipment of the Telangana customers and I send to my hub in Hyderabad. So a consolidated product comes, it is deconsolidated or broken up or segregated or sorted in Hyderabad, and then I use smaller transportation, short haul transportation between Hyderabad to the different cities within the state. So this is the benefit I can take out of, and I'm saving a lot of money because the major transportation is from Guwahati to Hyderabad. Now think, I have 10 distributors in Telangana, or say 20 distributors in Telangana. If I do not have a warehouse which can deconsolidate, I will have to use 20 long haul trucks from Guwahati to all the 20 distributors or retailers, which is extremely expensive. I would rather have one single shipment truck coming from Guwahati to Hyderabad, and the rest I only have the last mile deliveries or courier companies, etc., who can deliver. Today you have local express cargo deliveries like the Safe Express and others who will take the responsibility of delivering to my distributors or retailers. So this is the kind of, let me tell you another benefit of a warehouse. Now there are items which are produced at a particular period of time, but utilized throughout the year. Can you name one of them? I will name you because you are all muted. Obviously, I understand. For example, some food grain which are cultivated at a selective period of time, either winter or summer or monsoon or whatever it is, but they are utilized or consumed throughout the. So what happens once I have produced? Suppose the harvesting season is just coming in the next 2 months. What happens after that? It has to be stored, right? So it has to be stored in such a way that it can be consumed throughout the year. So there are certain items which are again just the opposite, which are manufactured throughout the year. I can give a very small example. For example, crackers, a very simple example, crackers. Primarily used Diwali, right? But they probably are produced. Think of raincoats or umbrella. Do you think they are only manufactured during monsoon season? No. It takes a company to manufacture raincoats or umbrella, etc., for at least 6, 7, 8 months during the year. But they are primarily consumed in a particular season of the year. So both ways. So these are the benefits, either economic or the service benefit. There are warehouses which offer you assortment services. What is assorted? Mix. When you go to a mithai shop, you see assorted mithais, right? During Diwali and Dasara and etc. You all have heard of decathlon. who offers you a mix or an assorted in the same warehouse, in the same distribution center. It will give you the choice of assorting different kinds of sports goods. You can assort some cricketing equipments to cycling, to whatever PPEs, etc. that you require. You can use. So warehouses offer you. It also give you a kind of a postponement services. What is postponement? Now, I may not have an order now, but I'm anticipating this is the month of April. Now, assume that I'm anticipating certain kind of a product to be sold in the market in the month of July, for example. So what I would do is that without labeling, without packing, I will have enough. The product would be stored in a particular warehouse, but I will postpone the delivery. I will not process it. I will not label it. I will not pack it. Suppose mineral water bottle or a kind of a soft drink or a kind of whatever. I'll postpone the service. I will not pack it. But they are ready because I anticipate the demand. And the moment that demand arrives, I will process the goods from my warehouse and deliver it. So these are the kind of benefits that we get out of warehouses. So as I said, consolidation. You have break bulk. This is break bulk. I told you, coming from Guwahati, breaking the bulk in Hyderabad and delivering to different customer in Telangana. This is what I just said a couple of minutes back. So these are the kind of processing postponement. I just said I can postpone. I can use a warehouse. The final production will happen when I know the actual demand. When I know the actual demand, but it will be kept ready. Okay. So I've already explained what is postponement. I have told you stockpiling. There could be different examples. Agricultural products harvested at a specific time with the subsequent consumption throughout the year. This is stockpiling. I've just mentioned over here. Agricultural products which are harvested in a particular period of the year, but used or consumed different throughout the year. So that's stockpiling. So there are certain service benefits as well. I told you assortment. I gave you the example of decathlon. There could be spot stock. There could be production support. These last two are extremely important as far as a warehouse is concerned. What does a production team require? What does your mother require at kitchen? To cook the food, what does she require? She requires raw materials, components like spices, like vegetables, like sugar, oil, etc. Without them, the production or the cooking will stop. The same thing happens in a manufacturing industry. Warehouses should have sufficient quantity of raw materials and components so the production does not stop. For marketing as well, at the same time, it is the duty of the marketing team. They commit delivery to the customer. And if they can't fulfill the commitment, marketing team are the face of an organization to the entire economy or market. They are the brand ambassadors kind of a particular company. So their commitment is extremely important. So if they have committed a delivery, it has to be fulfilled. And who should fulfill? A proper inventory management. Where is inventory kept? At the warehouses. So this is two of the very important: production support and market support. So this is, I have already said what is production support. So basically these are the various warehouse documents. And as I said, the entire logistics process is moving around the documentation. Okay, and so receipts, warrants, agreement, bin cards. Bin cards, I repeat, a lot of people are working in warehouses. They know bin cards are basically describing a kind of the products available in a particular rack or in a particular store, etc. So it gives a damage report, inspection report, delivery orders, dispatch, what has been dispatched, different ledgers, material report. Now, this is not sacrosanct. This is not all. Different companies have their own. These are basically fundamental, basic reports. But as I said, companies are free and they do use their own modified version of various documents. Barcoding is today is extremely important. This is very important, this particular slide. This slide and the next slide. What this slide says? This slide says as management decision. I told you what are the parameters. Before you set up a warehouse, what are the factors you should think of before selecting a place for a warehouse? That's one. Number two, in terms of operation, one is setup and the other one is operation. And the next few slides actually describes these two slides of the factors for selection of a site. Okay, this one. So site selection depends upon the cost, the facilities, whether it can be extended. Scalability means when my operation increases, goes up, will I be able to expand my warehouse? Do I have provision? How hard is the soil? Then the layout, will it be able to accommodate? What kind of pallet size will it accommodate? So does it have a pilferage protection? Does it have temperature control? Will there be a product deterioration? When you say deterioration, that means a product, the quality of product being compromised because of lack of security, because lack of handling, because of lack of skill of labor, etc., etc. Pilferage comes of theft. Pilferage comes of lack of security. Okay, and operations and operating. What are the three things that decide what kind of operations a warehouse will have? The design, the handling. The most important part in a warehouse is continuity. Very, very, very important. It should be, the flow should be continuous. There are some technical aspects which says you have to a particular product from the point of store to dispatch or arrival to store has to be short. There should not be too many people handling that product. So there are some technical areas in warehouse handling, but overall, this particular portion, handling and then going back to continuity, is extremely important. Design. What is the height of a warehouse? How many stories it has? Now, when you say height, typically a warehouse would have a 20 feet height, but as I said, and it also depends. Earlier, the warehouse, the utilization of the warehouse was looked upon at a two-dimensional level. That means the length and breadth of the warehouse. But today, utilizing the height is extremely important because we are using very, very modern system of rack and retrieval system. We have trucks, we have trolleys, we have cranes, which allow us to retrieve and store our product at a height of 15, 18, 20 feet from the base. So in terms of operations, these are the factors that needs to be considered. As I said, the next few steps only explains what? Explains these two diagrams that we have just discussed in terms of operation and in terms of planning. So I will not stop at the slides, the subsequent slides about using of elevators, about the height utilization. As I said, most warehouses 20 to 30 feet ceiling. So this would be a little technical for many of the participants. So I will not hold it over here. Use of forklifts, as I have already said, using of the forklifts. Okay. How quickly a straight flow there are kind of material handling technology, scale of economies. When I say continuity, okay, as I said, it is very important. The flow should be continuous without any pause. So that's the reason it should not be handled by multiple entities within the warehouse. And economics, using the scale of economics is very important. That means a particular material handling equipment should be in a position to handle as many units as possible. That would ensure economies of scale. That would also save a lot of time in warehouse operations. So with that, I basically will, come to the end of I just scroll through in terms of planning, what you need to do, the travel distance, storage area, how a storage area, a basic storage area looks like. Planning and distribution, site selection, I've already told you what are the various things that you need to look when you build a site. You have to see the cost of the procurement, the labor, the infrastructure, the connectivity to the ports, all that is required when you do a site selection. So the subsequent slides only describes the establishment and the operations of a warehouse. So with that, we come to the end of our first PowerPoint presentation, which gives us an overall or a macro view of a warehouse. We quickly go to our next PowerPoint, and which is customs warehouse. So our discussion, we have just two PowerPoints now. One is customs warehouse, and the other one will be about the process of customs clearance, which would be a little document oriented, a little technical, but it is important that we have an idea as what customs warehouse are. So it's basically a bonded warehouse, supervised customs authorities. It's dutiable. A bonded warehouse is a storage facility licensed by the government for keeping imported goods. So here again, as always, is a secured area managed by a state or private enterprise. I'm talking of bonded warehouse. Liabilities are generally cancelled when the goods are exported. That means when you take out your shipment. So basically you are importing goods, you are buying goods from other country, or you are selling goods. That means you're exporting goods from your country to the other. Either way, these are subject to certain inspection. Whether you abide by certain rules and regulations of your country and the country where the shipment is being sent. For example, when you send any export, people have to be sure whether this particular shipment should be exported out of the country, whether it contains any narcotics, whether there are items which are antiques in nature. So there are various, so it has to be, you have to give a bond. So it's basically a building. Bonded warehouse is basically a building in a secured area. It is managed by the state government. Upon entry of the goods in the warehouse, the importer and warehouse they have to give a bond to the customs that it is subject to inspection and they abide by the documentation. And withdrawn for consumption domestically after payment of duty. That means you have imported certain goods to be sold within India. There are certain items which are dutiable unless and until it is covered by AFTA. That is, you are under a free trade agreement where certain commodities are exempted of duties. For example, automobiles attract a very high import duty. So various commodities have various import duties. 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, 10, 15, 20%, whatever it may be. You need to pay the duty and release the good. Right? And most important, an integral part of the global supply chain, these bonded warehouses These are the entry and exit point of a country, and without this, the global supply chain will not have the chain in that term. So it is a very, very important part of the global supply chain. Now, what is a dry port? So these are the few things one has to remember. We talk of a port and we talk of a dry port. We all know what a port is. A port is a place which is adjacent to a particular ocean or sea, which is an area where you have ships, where you can dispatch your shipments through a vessel, to a ship, you can customs clear your shipment. What happens when a shipment comes from Hyderabad? What happens when a shipment needs to be exported from Delhi? Will the exporter come all the way to Mumbai or Chennai or Visakhapatnam or Kandla, etc., to customs clear his shipment? No. So there are dry ports, and few of the dry ports have been converted into ICD. They are called Inland Container Depot. I take the example, since we all come from Hyderabad. Hyderabad has a dry port. Why it is called a dry port? Dry means no water. We do not. It's a landlocked city. Telangana is a landlocked state. I do not have a port over here. I do not have a seaport over here. So if my shipment has to go to USA by ship, I have to take this shipment to Mumbai. But before I take it to Mumbai, I have the option of getting this customs cleared at Hyderabad itself. I need not go all the way to Mumbai. The same thing happens when I'm an importer. So I'm a shipment coming from US or Dubai or Singapore or anywhere else. How will it enter my country if it's a sea shipment? I'm not talking of air shipments, by the way. Participants, we are going to restrict our discussion mostly to ocean shipments. So the shipment arrives. How will it arrive? It will arrive at the port of entry. What is the port of entry? Primarily, traditionally, we have two major ports which are under the control of the union government. One is Nhava Sheva, one is Mumbai, and the other one is Chennai. So they will enter the country through the port, but they will not be discharged at the port. It will still remain in the control of Container Corporation of India. So at the port, the container will not be opened, it will not be inspected, the goods will not be inspected, no documentations are supposed to be submitted there. It will straight away come to Sanat Nagar, Hyderabad by train, mainly by goods train, sometimes by road transport also. Then I am the importer. I go to Sanat Nagar. I submit my documents. I will come to the documentation part later. I get the shipment released. I pay the duty and I take my shipment away. After that, what do I do with the shipment? Is a different issue. So it is very important to understand that dry port. Because why? Because our country is developing in terms of economy. So lot of areas within the hinterland. What is the hinterland? Hinterland is the area at the interior of the country. So the hinterland, there are a lot of industrial zones today, and they need to export. If they have to export, government has decided that they are going to have ICD and CFS. So function, intermodal connection, direct and easy connection to port by rail or road, customs clearance services. So container handling, you can do stuffing, you can do bulk cargo, you can do a break bulk cargo, etc., are all available. So where are the locations? I've already told you, at the hinterland. They are remote from the seaports. They are not close to the seaport, either close or maybe far away. Think of Delhi, which is far away from any other seaport in India. For example, Hyderabad, we have Bangalore, you have Faridabad, Perth in Australia. In India, you have closely 300 dry ports, but not all the dry ports are ICD. You have a port which are primarily for bulk cargo, but when you have a dry port, ICD, Inland Container Depot, that means commodities which are containerized can be processed, handled, and customs cleared at ICD. So how many ICDs we have? Roughly about 129 ICDs we have in our country. That is why they are called inland container depot. Why do importers use bonded warehouse? Sometimes not why. Sometimes they are compelled to use a customs bonded warehouse because they won't be able to operate unless until it's a if the company work functions in a large scale. He does not have his own go down. He may not be able to pay the customs duty right away. Probably he has to go for a negotiation. There may be some error. So from the time being, the shipment has to be released from the shipping line and kept somewhere. It is kept and stored in a bonded warehouse. So there are certain advantages of a bonded warehouse. The owner is allowed to brand grade level, goods are kept at bond and use collateral security for bank loan. They can keep the bank, they can get a bank loan if they want to in terms of the transaction for his dispatch, for whatever he wants to do with his imported goods. It can be re-exported or used domestically. There is a need today for a modern warehouse zones. Country is growing. India wants to be the, if you look at China, China was the first one probably to invent the concept of special economic zone. We'll come to special economic zone a little later, but modern warehouse zones are required in order to transact and trade with other countries of the world. Storage with payment without payment of duties, uncertainties of supply, sophistication in manufacturing and distribution. Old age storage will not help. Adjustment between production and usage. It's used as a reservoir of goods. It's a huge inventory. Stocking of Indian consignment, and we can use ICDs at international locations also. That's a, for example, Indian leather industry use the Dubai free trade zone. Similarly, international companies, multinational companies abroad, they also use our free trade zone, which we will come and see later what happens with the with this economic zones. What are the kind of documents are required? Warehouse warrants. It carries the title of the goods. Who are the owner of this goods? It's a dock warrant. At the dock, what is a dock? Dock is a port where shipments are loaded and unloaded. Simple. Now, as I said, customs clearance, warehousing, bonded warehouses, they are subject to several documentation. And keep one thing in mind always. I said this at the very beginning. Why it is difficult to learn everything about logistics is because it is evolving all the time. There are many ports today which has done away, completely eliminated the process of manual documentation. They have electronic documentation. So it is changing. Every day there are new processes. Every day there are new inventions. Everybody, the economy as a whole, the global economy is trying to make the industries, giving the industries the benefit of doing trade with lesser and lesser restrictions, which used to be there earlier. So you have dock warrant, you have receipt as a receipt of the bonded warehouse, accepting and keeping the documents with them under safe custody. Delivery order, that means it has to be given by the consignor or the shipper. Once you get the delivery or issue the delivery order, the port authorities will deliver the goods to the designated receiver. So document used for transfer of ownership of goods. So different kinds of documentations are used right from the time when shipment arrives at a port, both ways. Mind you, we are not talking of one-way consignment, we are talking of export and import. So documentation as required in both the cases are different. And the sequence of document, the clarity of documents, the correction of the documents, the documents being exact and having no errors is extremely important. And that makes the logistics process very, very prompt, efficient, and smooth. The more error-free documents you have, the better it is for you for a safer transition of goods from one country to the other. This is the process. How it happens? This process was laid down in Customs Act 1962. Right from appointment of a public warehouse, or you give a license to a private warehouse to operate as a bonded warehouse. And then it goes on, permission for storage, for how long, who is to control the goods, who has to payment the rate, what right the owner has, then manufacture, then you remove, then you clear for home consumption or re-export, removal right. So there is a process. This is a 15-step process, as you can see over here, 15-step process. And I've also given you the direction, the sequence of how the process has to happen in terms of warehouse goods. Free trade warehouse zone. It's a part of the SEZ. It's a part of the SEZ. Excuse me. So it's a sanitized zone, warehouse for different kinds of product, create trade-related infrastructure, create a world-class infrastructure. Mind you, we are talking of working with countries which are far advanced than us, so we have to compete with them. And with that purpose, FTWZ, which has been made a part of the special economic zone. Okay, established in areas proximate to the seaports. Essential, they are supposed to give us the essential logistics infrastructure and facilities to importer and exporter who does international trade, who are engaged in international trade day in and day out. So there you can warehouse different types of products. You have different types. And what is also very important at this at the bonded warehouse is the connectivity to the hinterland, which was a big drawback in our country earlier. And that's the reason the popularity of 3PL organizations are coming, because there is a need for monitoring or handling or controlling the multimodal transportation. You have imported goods coming in from China or Singapore or London, UK, USA, etc. But how will they be connected to your customers who are there inside, within the country, interior of the country, say in Kolkata, in Delhi, in Jaipur, in Gujarat, in Bhopal, in Patna, in Pune, in Surat, etc. This hinterland connectivity is today very important. And this connectivity now is created by surface transport, by railways. And also the other day we discussed another mode of transportation, which is becoming very, very popular. It is that inland water transportation as well. So the advantage for imports, for exports, and for re-exports, I will not spend time reading through them. I request you, whenever you have access to any of these PowerPoint presentation, to have a look and you get an idea as to what are the benefits that FTWZ provides in terms of separately for imports, exports, etc. Okay. Important. What are the kind of warehouses essential in integrated trade logistics? Warehouses are distributed based on ownership and service. And then when you have ownership, it could be either a cooperative, private, or public. Either it's owned by a private, which we have discussed in warehousing. And when it comes to services, whether it is for special commodity, which is meant for cold storage, is it for grains, is it for automobiles, is it an institutionalized, etc. Only public warehouses, bonded warehouses, public and bonded are quite similar to each other, though bonded is a kind of public warehouses. It is, but all public warehouses are not bonded, but all bonded warehouses are public warehouses. So what happens? Who are the owners or who are the facilitators or the controllers of public warehouses? Food Corporation of India, You have railway warehousing yard, you have the banks and go down, and you have the CWC Warehousing Corporation, Central Warehousing Corporation. Yes, the Food Corporation of India, Central Warehousing Corporation, Railway Warehousing Yard, the banks and they are the people who are the custodian of all the public warehouses. SEZ, I think this is something all of, or particularly people who are engaged in business, you know, it's a duty-free enclave. So it helps us to earn foreign exchanges, a territory for the purchase of trade operations. So basically, overall, SEZ are meant to facilitate, encourage foreign FDIs, foreign direct investment. We are encouraging people, our manufacturers or traders from other countries to do business with us. They can come set up their institutions, manufacturing units, assembly units at the SEZ without the government of India or without the government. In fact, SEZ is not only applicable in India to other countries as well, without thinking much about paying a very high duties and taxes. So these are basically again all about SEZ. There are no regular assessment by customs. So you actually have a very SEZ has given a lot of peace of mind for foreign investors to come and execute and process their business in a different country altogether. Because every now and then you do not have a processing and inspection problem. Okay, it helps in generating a lot of employment, prospects. Okay, this SEZ. Okay, there's a tax relief from customs tariff, there's a tax relief from central excise. So all these benefits are associated with uh, special economic zones. So basically, so we come to the end of customs warehousing, and then we quickly go to the process of customs clearance, and we try to see, as I said, I would request everybody not to really, is it quite technical, okay, and you have specialized people in business who are quite familiar, and as I said, this is a very methodical process. It goes through a particular sequence. There are some documentations which are extremely essential for customs clearance. So there is, again, there is no rocket science as such, but it is not quite simple. Okay, sometimes it can go very complicated, particularly in terms of certain commodities. Personally, I have experienced customs clearance of several commodities. One of them is personal effects. Personal effects like our household furniture, TV, washing machine or car, or even pets. By the way, even pets. When foreigners move from one country to the other, they carry their pets with them. Of course, the pets do not fly; they fly as a special cargo. And there is some very stringent procedure in customs clearance of pets as well. When we are talking of pets, we are talking primarily of dogs, cats, and birds. And other pets also move, but we are talking primarily of dogs, primarily followed by cats and birds as well. So they're very stringent. But as I said, documentation being the soul of the logistics system, documentation being the primarily facilitate the entire global logistics process. If you have the documentation in process, then customs clearance is something which will not give you a lot of headache. So anything moved in and out of India are subject to customs clearance. I said this earlier also. Don't let us not read through the entire slide. I've said this earlier as well. One has the right, if you are designated importer or exporter, one has the right to trade or do business with any other organization anywhere in the world. But you do not have the right to move commodities or products unless it satisfies certain rules and regulations of a particular country. And that is the reason it goes through a customs clearance process. where there are experts, specialized people who will inspect your goods against the documents, and they will give an approval and they will endorse that this particular product has the right to come into a country or be exported out of the country. As simple as that. So basically it starts with the bill of entry. Again, too much text over here. If you just go through the right left-hand side column, it all starts with the entry. As an importer, you have to produce a bill of entry to the customs. Then there is a customs process. You have to, if required, you have to amend the duties. Then e-filing of documents, manifestation, entry, noting, examination, customs charges, import duty, demurrage and detention. Very shortly, very briefly, let me explain. Two of the most important areas that one has to be careful about, particularly an import, is demurrage and detention. Now, a ship has brought your container from Singapore to India. Now, the ship will not wait forever. You will have to get your container released after submission of certain documents. If you are unable, the ship will give you some free time to release your duty, depending upon the shipping line, maybe 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, whatever it is. You have to release your shipment from the shipping line. If you don't do it, the shipping line will impose a penalty. Number one, that is detention charges. That means you're detaining the ship. Next comes demurrage. Once you have released your shipment from the shipping line, the shipment goes to the customs warehouse. Now, again, customs do not give you permission for holding the shipment in their warehouse for an unlimited period of time. No, there is a limited period of time within which you have to produce your document, pay the import duty, and get your shipment out of the bonded warehouse. If you don't do it, the customs are liable to charge you a penalty, which is called a demurrage. So, very short, there are more to learn about demurrage and detention, but in a short, these two areas are extremely important because I have seen throughout my career, companies have paid large amount of demurrage and detention because the documents were not adequate. The documents were not filed. And when I say filed, were not submitted basically with either the customs or the shipping. As I said, bill of entry is the most important, which an importer has to submit. So there are three types of, let us not get very technical. So there are basically three types of goods for which there are three types of bill of entry. One is for home consumption, basically, which is called a white bill of entry, ex-bond, and warehousing. So warehousing is basically, I have to keep this for a future use. What they are for home consumption. It is imported and cleared on full payment duty, and then it can be sold in India. That means I'm assuming a shipment has come imported from other country into India. This is called shipment for home consumption. Okay. What is an ex-bond? Used for clear for the warehouse on payment of duty. Simply, payment is bill paper. The good is classified and values asset on the time of clearance. So at the time of clearance only, you may have every good that arrives. You have to submit the value of the goods. But duty has to be payment on real-time inspection by the customs officers. Declaration of importer is not required as the goods are already assessed. So, and then, sorry, we go back. If the imported goods are not required immediately, importer would like to store the goods. In this case, what happens? He can defer the payment of customs duty. He need not pay the customs duty. For that, there is a yellow color bill of entry. So broadly, you pay the duty, home consumption, and you pay the duty based on the assessment on real time. You do not have to produce the value of the good. And third, you don't have to pay the duty right away. You store the goods. So there are different types of bill of entry. Obviously, the word itself says entry, at the point of entry into a country. In this case, we are referring to India. I said that there are many advanced ports today which does not follow manual system of documentation. They have gone into electrical data interchange. Hard copies are required only when it is required. Otherwise, it only goes to the system, digital. But unfortunately, in our country or many other countries today, of course, things are changing. As we can see, it is happening in surface transportation, hard copy documents, which are very, very time consuming. So non-EDI system, so big ports, it is used not for big ports and for less traffic, where hard copy documents are to be produced. So this is the process. What happens in an EDI system, declaration in EDI format, checklist, system then JBA number, which is endorsed on the printed checklist and returned to the importer. Hard copy at this point of time is not required. So based on the documentation produced electronically, a good is released after payment of import duty. In any case, import duty payment is required if it attracts import duty, or else you have to produce certificates of exemption that your goods is exempted from duty. This tells you basically of the process. Incoterms is something that we have discussed. I was discussing about the ports and ICDs in India. So this basically tells you if a shipment. So what is the importance here? You can see there are ICDs which are connected only by road, and there are ICDs which are connected only by rail. And some ICDs are connected by both roads and railways. And what does this ICD fulfill? As I said, if you are an exporter in Jaipur, for example, and you have to send your shipment to Singapore, then you customs clear your shipment. And now this entire one map will give you an idea of multimodal transportation, of the function of triport, ICDs, etc. So the shipment would come right from Jaipur to, say, Krishnapatnam port, or it will come to, say, JNPT in Mumbai, and from there it will get into a vessel and move out of the country. Right? It can happen from any place. Now, if you do not have, suppose you have a shipment in Kanpur, and Kanpur does not have an ICD, it has to move to the nearest ICD somewhere in Delhi, and from Delhi it has to come to Mumbai, and from Mumbai it has to move out to US or whatever. The other day we were discussing about multimodal transportation, right? So from Kanpur to Delhi, it will probably come in a truck, and then from Delhi or Faridabad, for example, I think the ICD is not in Delhi proper, it is in Faridabad. Faridabad is, you all know, is in Haryana, just adjacent to Delhi. From Faridabad, it will get into a train, a goods train, under the custody of Container Corporation of India, and then it will come to Mumbai, and from Mumbai it will get into a vessel and move out of the country. This goes as far export is concerned. The same thing happens when it comes to imports as well. Similar. So you have a shipment coming in from, say, Singapore. It comes to probably somewhere in Chennai, and then it will not be customs cleared. From Chennai, suppose the shipment is for Kanpur, so it will go to Faridabad, get customs cleared, and route transported to Kanpur. Now this journey, this particular journey from the port to the ICD, there are certain charges that needs to be paid, which is called inland haulage charges. Shipping company, they charge you freight charges based on the container. So the shipment which is moving from Singapore to Chennai, the shipping line will charge you a freight charge for the movement of the container between Singapore to Chennai. But the shipment is required not in Chennai. This is required in Kanpur. So it will move to the ICD in Hyderabad, where the Concor will charge you something which is called inland haulage charges. That means hauling the shipment from the port of entry. So Chennai is the port of entry and Faridabad becomes the port of discharge. It enters from Chennai and it discharges in Faridabad. And it will be customs cleared, and the owner has to take the responsibility of hiring a transporter after paying the customs duty, etc., hiring a transporter and take his shipments to his factory, his godown, etc. in Kanpur. So this basically is the process by which export and import happens within or away from the country. Very important, the list of the documents for export customs clearance. I have a detailed PDF on this, and I will briefly show you the PDF, okay, which tells you everything about pro forma invoice, packing list, shipping bill. I told you these are very standard documents, okay. This is for export and this is for import. What are the kind of documents? What is the process required for export as well as for import? Okay, this is the process. You have to register, process the shipping bill. I told you the shipping bill is the first document that needs to be submitted, and then arrival of the goods at the docks. So step by step, if you follow, I mean, there should not be any problem in getting a shipment. Arrival of goods at the docks, shipping bill, and then customs examination, verification. You have to, if required, you have to produce a sample for inspection. If required, you have to amend, etc. So, there is a process by which an import can be. We will not discuss input terms. I will end this. You must be surprised to see this slide over here. In my 30 years of 30 years experience in the logistics and supply chain industry, I've come across several instances, which has been a big learning process for me, huge. Well, when you work for a logistics company, you have to be always on your toes because you are moving goods for your customers. And what does logistics tell you? Right time, right place, right quantity, right quality, right people, right place, etc. Right time is extremely important because based on the shipment, the customer's business depends upon what time it is delivered. Now, what you see over here, you see a theater group called Surabhi Theatre. Some of you may have heard, maybe not. Now you must be thinking, what is Surabhi? So out of maybe several incidences that I have come across my life, which has given me a lot of tension, a lot of sleepless nights, but it has been a huge learning process for me. I thought just let me share briefly with you what happened with this theater group. It's a traditional theater group. They are people from Andhra and Telangana. They are about 40 to 45 members. They all are in this public garden in Hyderabad, and they perform plays, traditional mythological plays like Sri Ram Lalu, Maya Bazaar, etc. Okay, in public garden itself, and they stay there itself in public garden just behind the theater workshop. So what happened is that a group of artists from France, from Paris, came to Hyderabad, okay, and they saw their play. And they were so impressed, they invited the entire group to France to participate in a festival, in a theater festival in France itself. So this festival happens in France, I believe, every 2 years or every 1 year or whatever it may be. But it was a huge honor. Now, the thing, 45 people, right from the age of 70 to 7 years, who has not seen the world outside Hyderabad or Telangana or Andhra, going all the way to France. Now, the huge challenge was logistics, in the sense that entire theater group, their costumes, their props, their trunks, everything was to be carried without any damage and brought back. And within France, they were supposed to move around in at least 10 to 15 cities. About 7 to 10 cities performing their plays. One very difficulty that we came across was that the group was not ready to go because they requested, sorry, they requested us to carry food grains. They wanted to carry food items like rice, spices, etc. Now, in international trade logistics, if you are moving a good which is not commercial, which is personal in nature, you cannot carry food grains. You cannot carry any food items. Of course, you can carry a little bit of sample of a kilo or something, but they wanted to carry food items in terms of 50 to 60 kilos. So the kind of effort that we had to take place, because time was running out, we missed the vessel. Tickets were sold in France. We had to amend the BL. We had to go and write to the customs inspector, to the commissioner of customs. We had to write a letter to the central ministry, to the state ministry. So we could release the shipment over here, but what about France? So our counterpart in France, they also did the same thing. They had to amend the document. They had to request the ministry at their end, and we could clear the shipment just a day before the play started. And for almost about 4 weeks or 6 weeks, it was we were kind of on our toes because we were not sure whether the shipment would reach on time. So these are the kind of challenges that global logistics would take us. And we have to be always proactive. We have to ensure that the process is correct. We have to anticipate the risks in global logistics. We have to ensure that our documentations are proper. We have to ensure that the people who are handling the logistics and the back-end office work are skilled enough. They have the proper knowledge. Is extremely important. Otherwise, if this chain breaks at any point of time, the entire transition of goods, whatever shipment we are carrying, would get into a disaster. I'll end my presentation over here. We are 15 minutes away from our time. I am extremely thrilled, pleased, and honored to deliver this presentation to all of you participants. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed the presentation and whatever we shared. I know I had to be fast because, as I said, I've tried to cover a topic which is not even sufficient, well, even 50 to 60 hours is not sufficient for us to learn. But obviously, the program does not allow us to go beyond 6 hours. So I've tried to cover the fundamental and the main and the important points of global logistics with you. I'm always there. I mean, whenever you feel through with approval and consent of FTCCI authorities, I'm always there to help you out with any queries in future, with any kind of study materials. Okay. Just before I end, I said that I have a very, very useful document which would actually tell you everything about the customs clearance process, because it is so technical and so a little complicated. So this particular document, which is in the form of a PDF, okay, it tells you everything about what EDI is all about, what is assessment is all about, what is customs clearance, how examination of goods happens, how payment of duty happens, on what ground, what are the restrictions, what are the rules and regulations of payment of duty, what is a green channel, what you need to do to declare your goods, so what are the specialized schemes, etc. What is a bill of entry? So all this is covered in this particular document, and I'll be pleased to share with you, again, as I said, with consent and approval from FTCCI authorities. I will leave the rest of the session for the participants to ask me if they have any questions at this point of time. Okay. And Mr. Prasad?
Yes, sir.
I'll be happy if anybody has, rather than chatting, if they can unmute themselves and ask me a question.
Okay. Mrs. Chandana is online now.
Yes, please, Ms. Chandana. Good afternoon. Good morning, rather. I'm sorry. Sir. Is she chatting?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yeah, bro.
Like everything is clear. If you can have the presentations, you can go through it once again. So,
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry.
I mean, the session was good, sir. The session was clear.
Okay. You
Uh,
wanted to ask about the Foreign Exchange Management Act, right?
no, sir. I did not ask any question regarding foreign exchange management.
Okay. Somebody, I think. Okay. Yeah. What is your question? What is your, Mr. Chandana, what is your question? You have to ask anything?
No, no, sir. Nothing. If you can share the presentation, sir, that
Oh,
would be
of course,
fine.
of course, of course. I won't be able to share the questions directly.
Okay.
Sorry, the presentations or the study materials directly, but definitely I will be in touch with FTCCI authorities.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
And
sir.
FTCCI authorities,
Oh,
and then they will decide how to distribute. Okay.
okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Everything is okay now.
Okay. If somebody has any other question, let it come. You can send it by WhatsApp or email to me. I'll be happy to get back to you.
Yeah, Mr. Anjan Kumar is also online now. You can speak with him.
Yes, yes.
Sir, very good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, can you suggest the best book regarding to the supply chain management, sir?
I'll give you a very honest answer.
Yes, sir.
I don't read too many textbooks myself.
Okay.
Of course, there are textbooks, and I have already suggested the textbooks to some of the FTCCI authorities. If you want to study supply chain as a subject, logistics and supply chain as a subject.
Yes, sir. I would like to study supply chain and logistics as a subject.
You can if you have something to write down, you can write down. You can study book from Sunil Chopra.
Sunil Chopra.
Yes, Sunil Chopra. There's a book by Chopra and Mendel, Mindl, and Kalra.
Pardon, I didn't get you, sir.
Okay, I'll write it over here.
Okay.
I will just writing the author's name over here.
Okay.
1 second, please. Chopra, Kalra. And if you want to study global logistics in connection to export, import, and international trade, there is a very simple book from, can you all see, from one Mr. Ram Singh.
No, sir, I am unable to see you.
I have sent by message. So I'll tell you, I've sent a message just now.
No, sir, we are unable to see you.
Okay, you cannot see?
No, you can check it. In the short form, you can check it.
Okay, okay.
So there are two books. One is Chopra, Kalra, Mendel. It's an excellent book for supply chain management. And the other book is from Mr. Ram Singh.
Sir, okay.
He's a professor from IFT, Institute of Foreign Trade. Yes, exactly. It's a very simple book, very nicely made, and number of my presentations is also derived from Mr. Ram Singh's book.
Okay.
Very simple to understand. The other suggestion that I will give, my humble suggestion to all of you, if you really, somebody is really interested to learn this subject of supply chain, logistics, global supply chain. See, there are few technical, today we are discussing some very, very technical areas of customs clearance, etc.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But if you really want to understand the process of global logistics, supply chain, we need to read a lot of articles which are available in internet. Okay, lot of white papers and journals, because as I said, logistics and supply chain as a concept is evolving every day, every week, every new things are coming up. Okay, so if you read a book which was published as 10 years back, we may be missing out something. So there are scholars and who are publishing a lot of articles, journals, and if you are really interested to learn, I think we can look at these white papers and journals being published. Then you can become members of there are a lot of supply chain groups, okay, and who can provide you with a lot of interesting articles. As I said, logistics earlier, as I told you, logistics today is not an operational planning. It's a strategic planning.
Yes, sir. It is a strategical planning, and due to this COVID-19, many logistics were held all over the world, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. Today, during this disaster, we, even common people, see, logistics has never been a very, very popular subject, let me tell you.
But now all over India, I think so, sir. It will be a great subject to the people who are in India.
100%, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Sir,
And,
one more thing, sir. Can you please add me in the group of supply chain management department where I can get many articles and so that I can go through that?
Okay, again, I do not have access to all your.
Sure, sir. I will text you.
Okay, I'll try. See, there are groups where I'm a part of, where people are logistics professionals. Actually, so, okay, no problem. You can approach me and I'll see what best I can do. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And Mr. Prasad, if there are no questions, can we end this session?
Hello.
Yes, thank you very much. We'll end the meeting, end the session today.
Yeah, actually, one more person is online. Mr. JS Murthy. You can speak with.
Yes, Mr. Murthy, please tell me. I think there's a problem with these chats.
Yes, sir. I am asking about the FEMA rules and regulations when at the time of customs clearance.
See, when you're paying a customer, okay, when you pay, see, in international logistics, it's a very interesting question. In international logistics, one thing which is very, very important, and I have come across this problem a number of times, okay, when you get into a contract, suppose you have committed a customer of paying $1,000 for a particular, just an example of $1,000 for a particular consignment. Now, when you commit, you do not know whether the exchange value is going to go up or go down, correct?
Correct.
So you, sometimes we get into what is called a forward contract. You know what is a forward contract? Forward contract is, suppose today the exchange rate is 70 rupees and I freeze the 70 rupees exchange rate for the next 6 months. I have to make sure that within the 6 months, if I have to pay, so I cannot, nobody can claim anything more than 70 rupees per dollar.
Okay.
Otherwise, what happens, today you get into a contract and the currency is fluctuating so much, okay? So tomorrow, this 70 rupees can go into 85 rupees also, because we are losing money. So your entire cost of this particular transaction will, get into a trouble. So basically, this it basically aims to amend the law relating to foreign exchange, okay, and it facilitates the trade and payment. That is the role of, you're talking of Foreign Exchange Management Act, correct, FEMA? Hello.
I think they are in offline now, sir.
Okay. Thank you then.
Hello.
Yeah, Murthy, you can speak now.
Yes, sir. This didn't receive total resolution for this question.
Sorry, sir.
So
Resolution.
Yeah, resolution. So
Which
I am expecting the resolution as a for every transaction. This FEMA regulations are applicable, or what are the documentation required to submit for a FEMA department or RBI department? Is there anything like that?
No, for exchange, there are no such documentation which related to FEMA that you need to submit when it comes to the customs clearance. I will send this PPT where you get the exact documentation that is required for clearance of goods.
Okay.
So it's basically see, earlier there was Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, which was called FERA.
Right, sir.
Right? Now this FEMA has replaced this FERA, and now it is just to regulate, so that we are not unnecessarily losing foreign exchange to any other country. See, foreign exchange is extremely important for any country. Okay, so there should not be any misuse or any mistransaction related to foreign exchange. And it actually falls under WTO, World Trade Organization.
Okay. And any time limit for the documentation after clearing the?
As I said, the time limit depends upon either the shipping line or the customs. Very simple. Your shipment has come by sea, right? Suppose, example, your shipment has come by sea. There are many shipping lines.
Okay.
You have heard of Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, Evergreen, right?
Yes, sir.
See, these are the popular shipping lines in the world. Okay. Every shipping line has their own what is called detention policies. Some shipping line will give you it is called a free time. So your shipment has arrived today. Today is what? Today is 20th of April.
Okay.
So the moment they issue an arrival notice, they give you an arrival notice. They will notify, Mr. Murthy, your shipment has arrived in Hyderabad. Please come and clear.
Okay.
From today, you get 72 hours to clear the shipment. Okay. Suppose Hapag-Lloyd has given you only 72 hours to clear. After that, they will charge you, suppose say $50 per day. $50 per day means 3,000 rupees per day. For example, that means within the 72 hours, you have to go submit your bill of lading, your bill of entry, okay, your packing list. There are bunch of documents which are required to release your shipment.
Okay.
If your bill of lading is negotiable, then you have to first go to the bank.
Okay. You
have to pay, because your exporter will not release the shipment unless you have paid him the money for, that you purchased that material from.
Okay.
So you have to go to your, suppose your banker is HDFC Bank, okay, or Hong Kong Bank, HSBC, or Standard Chartered Bank. So you go to your bank, whichever bank you have.
Okay.
Your exporter in Singapore will submit the bill of lading to his bank in Singapore.
Okay.
This bank will transfer the bill of lading to your bank in Hyderabad.
Okay.
You have to first, if the bill of lading is negotiable,
Okay.
You will not get the bill of lading. Unless you get the bill of lading, you will not be able to release the shipment.
Okay.
So you have to go pay the bill of lading as per the exchange rate or whatever that has been agreed upon between you and your exporter.
Okay.
And then the bank will issue the original bill of lading to you. With that bill of lading, you have to go to the shipping line. You submit the bill of lading, and shipping line will give you a delivery order. With that delivery order, you go to ICD in Sanat Nagar.
Okay.
You pay the import duty. You release the shipment.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you go beyond 72 hours, you will have to pay penalty.
Okay.
So once the shipment is released, goes into customs bonded warehouse. There again, customs gives you 3 days period time, free period.
Okay, sir.
You have to clear the shipment from customs warehouse within the 3-day period.
Okay.
From the 4th day, that means after 72 hours, customs will charge you demurrages.
Okay.
You have to be very, very careful about it. So you have to be very, very particular about the documentation.
Okay, sir.
And if you have misused foreign currency, then the problem will be that you will be penalized under the FEMA Act.
Okay. Okay.
They will restrict you from doing any kind of import or export.
Okay.
These are related, FERA and FEMA, these are related, topics in global logistics. Okay, associated. Thank you very much, Mr. Murthy. Pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.